Jenny, can I start the meeting and wait to do the business until the lawyer comes back in? Can I start the meeting? Okay. All right. I will call to order this High Springs Community Redevelopment Agency meeting of May 24th. Mr. Williams, would you be kind enough to do a prayer for us? Mm-hmm.
Most gracious God, as we come now for this meeting, Lord, we just pray, God, that you would just lead us and guide us, Lord. Bless us with wills of knowledge and understanding, God, that we would do what's best for the CRA, God. Again, we ask you to bless us in a mighty way, like you always did. In your sweet holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jenny, could you do roll call, please?
Chair Lavin.
Here.
Vice Chair James is not present. Member Williams.
Here.
Member Jameson is absent. Member Jones. Here.
Thank you. Okay, can I get an approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Mm-hmm.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And is there a motion to approve the minutes from the April 19th, 2018 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it passes. Now, should I wait until Mr. Walker comes back in, or no? Okay. So our first items on the agenda tonight are to discuss the grant policies, and that would be item A would be open versus closed grant cycle, and then grant limits. And I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, Christina.
Sure. Previously, we had a closed grant cycle where we made awards twice a year. There's been a lot of discussion about keeping that open to allow simplicity in applying for and obtaining a grant as needed. So with that, I did an analysis. I kind of looked at all the different districts in Gainesville and looked at what they were doing. And our current limits are very much like on par with the average, the norm. So as far as a suggestion, we would recommend that we keep the limits the same, however, keep it an open cycle, but differentiate between commercial and residential grants. Instead of doing a residential grant, perhaps as a separate matter, we could look at doing like a beautification award or a paint-only program, but leave the grants strictly to the commercial. And then as far as, and I also noticed like within our policy, we had a $5,000 events and programs. And just based on discussions I've had like around town, it seems like we have a great need for other things like maybe marketing. So instead of maybe doing events and programs, we could look at doing things like marketing and whatnot for economic development purposes. But for the sake of the grant policy, I know there's a lot of emphasis on the commercial side, and so the amounts seem very much on par. And due to the match, it doesn't seem like in the past the amounts have been problematic. However, keeping it open would be much more efficient to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the business community as they have them.
So are you recommending then, in lieu of the quote-unquote residential facade grants, to do a beautification award, or what was the other term that you used?
Or we could do a paint-only, like pressure washing and painting, and maybe cap it out, like Gainesville does $500 or $750 depending on the district. Mm-hmm. We could do something like that as well.
Okay. And our current caps are $5,000 and $2,000. Is that
for $5,000 for residential, and then $10,000 and $15,000 for commercial, based on the number of stories.
Okay.
So the painting, that's a matching grant that we give all of that to $500.
Yeah, for the residential. And in terms of, it may, just for the sake of, for doing the commercial, it may be best to separate, do the commercial, just, and then as far as, residential, depending on, the direction of the board, we could either do a beautification grant, or we could do, a paint-only pressure washing, if that would be the desire.
And that would bring us closer in line with what the county commission is wanting us to do under their direction from the last time they renewed our CRA, correct?
Yeah, I think, the emphasis, the commercial side of things, property acquisition seemed very favorable, of course, redevelopment of blighted areas and whatnot. So I think, it serves it's definitely a great incentive. That's why a lot of communities do a paint-only program in residential areas. And so, so it's still addressing those needs, but, maybe, I've not seen other communities do, like if somebody does a garage or a roof, but, there's certainly a possibility to do that. But I think directing it towards the commercial, as far as, redeveloping the area, that's pretty much the standard, the norm. That's how Gainesville is approaching it.
Okay.
How many houses in that CRA district? How many homes in that area?
The lot number, I can get that for you. I don't have that off the top of my head, but residential lots.
Okay. Yeah. But they still have to go through the application and.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion from the public on the grants? No.
We need to vote on this.
If that would be, last time, I know Mayor Jameson mentioned, during this analysis, and if it is a decision of you all to do this, to make that streamlined, to do it to where, we're leaving it open, I think that's the major change with the commercial side, because the limits, again, are the same. But yeah, to make that change, we need a vote.
I feel like Christina this is what she's recommending. I feel like I would be safe in following her lead.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that because and they have more money to go towards the commercial.
Mm-hmm. You look like you were contradicting there.
Yeah.
Well, again, with the limits, it seems like the match kind of, due to the match requirement, that, it's not in the past, it's not been, it doesn't seem like there has been anyone that has gone unfunded because of the matching requirement. So, and that's the same as Gainesville. That's the way Gainesville is operating at this time.
And then if you went to the beautification or paint only, would they still have to come before the board to get that award, or is that something that you could do administratively? How would that change the process of that distribution?
Yeah, if you all would direct, if we did it to 500 and wanted to do it that way, that's certainly a possibility. Beautification award could be something, maybe, at the holidays or in the spring or however you all would choose. We could even designate a community organization to do that. There's just a number of ways that could be done, but that wouldn't have to be done through a formal grant process.
Do we need to work those details out to make a vote or a decision tonight? I guess that would be my question.
I think, the thing probably that's most pressing is whether it's closed or open, and then whether or not to leave it to commercial. We could, address residential separately later.
Okay, I make a motion that we leave the grants open and gear it more towards the commercial.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so moved. And then do we want to make any kind of a decision about the residential, or do we want to put that on another agenda in the future so she has clear direction?
Well, should we just go ahead with it now? She said the $500 for the paint only. We could go with that.
I think it's better if we decide, because
Yeah.
then she's not having to try to figure out what it is we want her to do.
And I'm not sure about beautification. That's something that we want to do a couple of times a year, or if it was deemed necessary, it's not something we'd have to do.
Mm-hmm. And then you got to have your criteria. When you're saying beautification, for a beautiful yard, for beautiful home, beautiful decoration, so you said
It's good.
beautification.
It's a good point. Yeah.
What is beautiful in one set of eyes is different in another set of eyes. You're right.
And then who will, do somebody submit a name saying they want to recognize this house, or do you go out and?
No, it could be open, and the number could be capped if we only do want to do one biannually. There's just a number of ways. It was just a matter of looking at ways to incentivize those improvements in another way. Outside of that way, we're still, addressing the need on the residential end, but while focusing on commercial.
Because I have to be honest with you, the residential grants, when they were given to the neighborhood, one of the grant recipients is sitting here. So he started fixing up his house, and then across the street they started fixing up their house, and then the other one started fixing up their house. And when you go through that neighborhood now, you do see it looks so much better than it did, and it's like once a couple people got on board. So I do believe that it has a useful purpose in revitalizing neighborhoods. And if we decide this and we do expand to the CRA to Douglas, it's going to be for that neighborhood as well, these rules or these guidelines. So, I do think that the residential has a valid and very useful purpose in our community. Does anybody in the audience want to speak to the residential grants to the board? Okay.
It seems as we were gearing more towards, have been for the last maybe 6 months or so. The feeling I got was we were trying to gear more toward commercial. I don't know. I'm wishing that we had our 2 other people here. Do you think we ought to table it until they're here so that we can, something we need to do?
No, we certainly can.
I think I'd like to table it, move that we table it.
Jenny?
I would suggest tabling it because I believe, and I'm not sure if this still stays that, but the executive director, Mr. Booth, had advised at one point that we were not doing residential.
Right.
So I don't know if that's still.
Yeah, and that was the reason for limited to commercial, but to try to do something that's not a typical, like right now we're doing 5,000,
Right.
and this would kind of,
It's minimum.
yeah.
So should we go ahead with what we decide on the commercial and table the residential issue until the next CRA meeting? Does that work for you, Christina, administratively? Because I don't want you're the one that's going to have to deal with it. Mr. Walker, I know Courtney was the one that was involved with the county, but they were really leaning on us to get away from the residential grants per se, and that was one of the criticisms they had when she had to go and negotiate the terms of the CRA extension. And so we're trying to make sure that we come in compliance with what they want so that when we go back to them next year that they're not going to, we won't jeopardize what we have put together out here. Is that correct? Am I accurate?
This is beyond my knowledge. I certainly would question the county as to why that would be, and perhaps because CDBG funds, you can have grants for that purpose, and that would be certainly a reason why, and they want to focus more on the commercial district.
Right.
But my question back to the county would be why? Why are you critical of a residential program when that does, just as you said, it spreads like fire through and it really addresses a community need. So, but I don't know what those negotiations were. Courtney handled all that. Certainly we could explore a little bit more of the why behind that if that's what they wished us to do. But she would have more intimate knowledge of,
She was,
and I'm sure she would have asked why. So
right.
it escapes me the reason why as we sit here. But
There's a lot of things.
And especially since Gainesville,
true.
Gainesville's doing the paint only at this time, so.
Right. Right. So it's the consensus that we will table this residential issue until the next meeting, and then Courtney would be here to advise us.
Yeah.
And the other members would be here to help make that decision.
I would like to see that.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that? No? Okay.
You should table it to the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Date certain time. Yes, ma'am. And to answer your question, yes, you should vote on it.
Bob Barnes, High Springs. I wasn't aware of that. In this discussion, it just said that you're not doing residential grants. You're actually not doing residential grants, or you're not encouraging?
Well, that was a discussion that, and Courtney's not here tonight, but she renegotiated the extension of the CRA. And my understanding from the conversations I've had with her is that they really do not want us to be using the funds for residential grants. And Mr. Booth has said that we're not supposed to do that, but that's why we're here tonight, is discussing those grant policies. And without the other two members and Courtney here, I don't feel like we can make a correct and accurate decision. And so we think we should table it at this point.
And I think that's probably a wise decision, to table it. But I would suggest you look at that 54-page extension or that plan. I don't think residential was taken out. So, and I don't recall, I was at those meetings, and I do not recall a big criticism of residential. So you're the CRA, you make the decisions, and your next meeting you'll discuss this, but I firmly believe residents should be given an opportunity, as they have in the past, for CRA grants or CRA money. But you'll look into it, I'm sure.
Certainly. And if there's some effort to restrict residential, then we'll bring that back to you. And if, of course, we'll ask the reason, what is the reason or rationale for this?
Yeah, but I would certainly think the big point of this, to me, is residential's in or out.
Right.
And
Right.
That should be made clear. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, so Mr. Walker, we should vote to table this until the next CRA meeting?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we table the discussion on residential grants.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay. And that does allow you then to continue with the commercial grants until we figure out how to handle that in a way that's going to be satisfactory to the county. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the High Springs New Century Women's Club grant application, which we have in our packet. And we have a representative here from the Women's Club tonight to speak to us if we have questions or want to quiz her, grill her. You want to tell us anything?
Well, I'm Carol Tate, the president of the High Springs New Century Women's Club. And as you can see by the estimate, it is a little bit high. But, well, I don't know if it's high because I have no idea what it would cost. We do have some options with that estimate that we could bring it down another possibly, where did I write that down? I think it was $6,800. But other than that, I think that's what it will be. It will be about $20,000. If we don't have it replaced, I don't think we can go through another summer with the unit we have. The unit we have is 20 years old, and it was used when it was installed. And the serviceman that we use said it could go at any time.
And is the Serviceman Heritage Mechanical?
Yes.
Is that who you use? Mm-hmm. And did you get any other estimates, Carol?
I was only required to get one.
I just was curious.
Yeah, I mean, we can. I have a list of the ones that are licensed in High Springs. I can get more, another one or two.
Because it looks like you have 4 units, right? There's 4 different heat pumps here.
Well, because the building was never built for air conditioning, and only one section is air conditioned now. The other section would need a completely different unit. And also something about putting the air handler on the roof now, that might be code, I'm not sure. But
Right.
there's
It might
expense.
be current code. They may have to
Yeah.
do something different.
There's expense involved with that.
Would you repeat what you said about the $6,000?
Well, on the estimate, he has a heat pump for the stage area, and that would help the air conditioning overall, of course. Otherwise, it will be sucking some of the coolness. And also, so that was $3,400. And also, he recommended 2 different units. The more expensive unit would pay for itself within 3 years. The difference, which is $3,400, that would pay for itself within 3 years. But we could go for the less expensive unit, which is so much better than anything else we would have.
Yeah.
She will have to go through the policy that the city has for purchasing anything over, so she will have to get the 3.
Have to get 3 estimates?
Yes, there'll have to be 3 estimates.
Okay.
There was a question about that. There's actually 3 applications being circulated for CRA grants. This is the first one that I started, and I received it from this building, from City Hall. And then after that, I was looking around, and there's 2 more available, and they do say other estimates. But this one only said the one, and I even spoke to Christina about it. She said, just keep doing what you're doing, so I did. But if you need 2 more, that's not a problem.
Well, and I have to defer to her because she's the money lady, and she knows what the policies are. There are certain levels of expenditures when we get to that we have to have more than 1 bid, and that's to protect us and you, to protect yourself,
Right.
and also to make sure that you're getting the best deal for your money. And so, if that's the policy, then we would have to table this grant application, and all you would need to do, Carol, is to get 2 more estimates and then come back to us, and we can set up a meeting maybe even sooner than a month, so that you don't have to wait another 30 days. If you can get the estimates within a couple of weeks, maybe. We'll have to check our calendar, but I think we could meet and have a short meeting.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys can approve, am I right, Jenny? They can approve the grant
expenditure
with the
condition
that they get the 3 estimates, or at least make the attempt.
Okay. I didn't know that.
But now, how somebody come back with one lower, so how she go out and get 2 more bids, and then one of the bids are lower than this bid.
You guys just vote on going with the low bid. That's what the grant would be attached to, the low bid.
So it would be conditional on the lowest bid that I would have for you. So you wouldn't have a dollar amount.
No.
Well, there's a maximum that we're working with anyway for a commercial 1-story building, correct? There's a maximum amount, which would be less than half of this bid, correct? So, we could have a vote where it goes to that or to whatever number we deem appropriate. The other thing is, how much do we have in that account to work with right at this
I
time?
believe there's 14,000.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what we have until September 30th, right? Okay. And we have any other applications on the table?
We have some smaller ones that are going to be coming in.
Okay. Okay.
Well, if that's what you would like to do, I move that we grant the application based on the lowest bid that comes in.
For
If you
the-
can get 3 or as many as you can. As 3 or fewer if you can't get them here.
Okay. Actually, I have a list. The building department gave me a list that I can go by.
But now when she get them bids, so does she have to come back before us again to get that amount approved up?
Not if we approve it
No,
tonight.
you approve half the low bid. It's how the grant's written, correct? Half of what they have to pay. So if it comes back at 18, then you're only going to be approving 9,000. So it's just half of the low bid.
Like blowing on stuff I can't see. You know what I mean?
Oh, you will see it. You
Yeah,
believe me, you will see
I
it.
understand, but I don't have a problem with that. We're going on this back. Because, you'll make sure. Okay.
That lady right there will make sure. I know that because she's a numbers person, so that I know she will do that.
Okay, we're fine with that. But you see, you got other grants coming in. And we have how much? Up to
14, I can get you, it's like 14, 1. 14,331.
Okay. Right.
I did.
You did? I'm sorry. I didn't
That's
hear you.
okay. I made the motion that we approve the grant based on the lowest bid, whatever the lowest bid came in, and she was going to try and get the more bids.
Okay. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
We have somebody in the audience that wishes to speak.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, before we vote on it. We have discussion on it.
Well, you've approved it, so, but is it $10,000?
The maximum.
The maximum they can get is 10,000. But it's already been approved now, but the problem you've opened up is you've got a public meeting that's disclosed the bid. You've disclosed the bid. You've disclosed the bid, so if two other people are watching this meeting, or two other people, she now tells, well, I've gotten the bid, they could come in with the bid $10 under. So, I mean, I'm just putting that out there as a point. I think it's certainly a good cause, and it's certainly a good thing to give the money to them, help them with the air conditioning. But now you've skewed the bid process somewhat. So I don't know how you will pick one of the three. Thank you.
That is a good point. We ran into that some time back, where the bid was seen, or could be seen on television, or whoever was in the audience, and that makes it, I mean, they know they can go lower than 20 and get the job.
Mm-hmm.
That does, it's not fair to Heritage.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that you give Heritage the chance to come back with and bring a second bid back.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
just give them the opportunity to bring, if they want to bring the same bid, they bring the same bid, but they have the chance to bring another bid back.
And the other item, Madam Chair, is if Jennifer senses that there is something going on with respect to the bid process, we can still reject all the bids. Mm-hmm. In other words, the process is we're going to receive the bids, and if we believe that the bids should be rejected, we still have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and we will make sure that the grant application, that there's only one consistent one that has the same information. Mm-hmm. I think the one that was used was a little bit more ambiguous, mm-hmm. but we'll make sure those are all updated and make sure it's along the lines.
So I know we passed it, but could we go through that again and then ask for 3 closed bids? One from the original, would that be appropriate for us to do that? From the original person that specified, and then 2 others if they could get it.
Right.
And that way it's a fair playing field for all parties involved. Should we do that?
That's perfectly fine. I think that's in keeping with the motion that was passed.
Okay. So do we need to vote on it again, or are we okay then?
No, I think that's staff's understanding is exactly as you just stated it, is that there will be 3 sealed bids.
Okay.
And that when Jennifer receives the bids, if she believes that she'll report that back, and then we'll reject all the bids or award one of the bids depending on what we get.
Okay. And so should Carol get the bids to Jennifer or bring them to Christina? Does it matter?
Who's set to bring, who will receive the bids?
Christina holds it, then we can look at them, but that's her area. So
Okay.
turn them into her.
Okay. Sorry to give you more work, but we'll approve and try to help you with it.
I appreciate what you're doing for us.
We appreciate what you do for our city, so. Okay. On to the next item, number 3, CRA plan revision and boundary extension. Christina, I'll turn this over to you.
Yeah, okay, so we've had a lot of support for the boundary extension and plan revision, of course, and as part of this, we're going to be looking at doing a new finding of necessity. And our workshop being next Thursday, the hope is that we could begin to identify potential advisory board members, because timing being of the essence with us needing to get this in place before December. So with that, as part of that finding of necessity process, it's pretty standard to have a consultant that does the finding of necessity, just due to the blight, the slum and blight finding. And a lot of times those words are misconstrued. It can be anything from a vacant lot to an underutilized property. There's just a number of things that can, be addressed within the slum and blight category. So with that, if you all agree, we could get a consultant to do that. They could do that within like a month or two or less. I mean, it's a very quick process, especially someone who does it all the time. And then that will give us the opportunity to begin to discuss. We have to have the advisory board in place to begin that, though. So, and then we can start discussing, plan revisions and then take an update to the county, hoping maybe around August, September. That way we can begin that conversation and make sure everything's moving forward. That way there's no surprises come November, December when we need to have it in place.
And what kind of cost would we be talking for a consultant to do this finding of necessity for us?
For someone like, say, of the caliber of like GAI out of Orlando, they've been doing redevelopment since redevelopment started in Florida, they would be about $15,000. And a tremendous resource. They'd come in, do the, of course, the extension and the finding and all of that. And And I did submit a grant to DEO. We're hoping that will be, something that we get from DEO to do that with grant funds. So
to be able to offset that cost. Okay. You've been working on 2 or 3 grants.
Yeah, also one for some comprehensive planning and whatnot. But, yeah, so that one would be for the finding of necessity.
Okay.
So how many grants you're working on?
2. We submitted 2. We're going to be looking at a few more. Some of them will be depending on the direction of the advisory board. Like if the advisory board would want to do a community garden, and we went to that nice grant workshop in Tallahassee a few weeks ago. There's just a tremendous amount of resources out there, anything from arts to history. Community gardens is something that a lot of folks seem very popular in a lot of communities right now. There's just a lot of things we could go after once we have the board in place and, begin to discuss, what the future, what direction we want to take and what sort of things we want to do.
Jenny, did she get a copy of what that student did that time, about several years ago?
I don't think she's seen it, unless she's looking in the file.
Have you seen a copy of what it is? It University of Florida student? He went up to start talking, but he went out and kind of evaluated the area out there. And he came out.
Was that a few months ago?
No.
Okay. I met someone at the affordable housing workshop the other day that came out and looked at the Douglas neighborhood. Harrington, Thomas Harrington?
No.
Okay.
That's my totally different.
Okay.
That was totally different. Now, this is a student. I think he was an intern or...
I'll look for that, yeah.
I have it. I can forward it to you.
Yeah.
You sent it to me, Jenny, so I can forward it to you to review. It's 3 or 4 years old now, I think. Okay.
But he went around and talked with the neighbors. He went around and talked with people in that community, and he did his evaluation, his little shots. So, please pursue the grants, because 15,000 is.
So, but yeah, but as far as, when I spoke with them and I said, they're like, well, make sure you get your advisory board in place. Once we have that rolling, everything should kind of start, pulling together nicely. But so hopefully we'll have a real nice turnout next Thursday. And
So now with that advisory board, that's something that have to be noticed, put in the newspaper. How would you select a board for that?
If you would, you could identify, as far as selecting people, if everybody, say you had, I don't know, it could be any number actually. I mean, you could do, I think up to, there is this, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but you would designate people to represent the Douglas neighborhood, be it property owners or, actual residents in the community. Anyone that has, and then as far as that process would need to be, no, defer to Scott. Does that have to be noticed when they, okay.
But you can start next week by letting people know that you're doing this and accepting applications or letters
Yeah,
of
definitely. I mean, the
interest.
participation in that first meeting would be very important, just because that way we already have, some candidates and we can begin that process.
Okay, so you need us to vote on whether or not we're okay with allowing you to move forward with having a consultant do the finding of necessity for us.
Yes.
Okay.
My apologies.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We're Commissioner James and Commissioner Jameson. We're on number 3B, trying to make a decision. Christina said that in order to get this moving forward is to get a consultant to do the finding of necessity for the extension to the Douglas neighborhood, and she's asking for us to do a vote on that. The approximate cost is about $15,000. She has written a grant to Department of Economic Opportunity that will probably cover the cost if we get the grant. So that's where we're at with the agenda at this moment.
Say that again.
We're going to need to do a finding of necessity because of the boundary extension. And so with that, it's pretty typical in most communities to hire a consultant to do the finding of necessity, to do the slum and blight determination. So with that, leading expert probably in the state is GAI, and their going rate right now is $15,000.
And this is the necessity
For the CRA to extend the boundary.
and the money's going to come from where?
We've submitted for a DEO grant for $15,000. We have not heard yet whether or not we will be getting that, but there is a grant out there for that. Otherwise, that's their current. That's the current step. We're just waiting to hear back from them on that. But we will. We need to get the advisory board in place because we can't start the finding of necessity until we have the advisory board in place. So. We're just talking about the timing of that because as far as to get it in place by December, we will need to have probably things as far as the finding of necessity at least in place, probably August, September at the very latest, and then begin discussing plan revisions so we can have a conversation with the county of the direction and the things that are being proposed so we can get it in place before December.
So if you don't get the grant, once again, and maybe I'm being redundant, where would the money come from if you don't get the grant?
Yeah, we would have to find another source if the grant, we could make it contingent on getting the grant. We could also wait until after we have the advisory board in place, but it is something we need to be thinking about. But, to emphasize, as far as getting that in place at this time. But, yeah, there is a grant out there. We haven't gotten it yet, but that's the current price tag, and that's what we're looking at right now.
Okay. Let's kind of just focus on the advisory board for now. I guess that's the decision we have to make for us. How many members and is that something we need to do tonight? And we can start getting this advisory board in place?
Well, we don't have to do, I mean, that's kind of the motivation for the workshop next Thursday, is that we need to, be identifying folks to bring and that might want to, serve in that capacity.
So can we table the finding of necessity consultant until we put the advisory board together? I think is what Mr. Williams is asking. Is that?
Because we need to have the advisory board in place anyway, so.
You know, 'cause I hate to say yes, and then we don't have the 15,000 to do what we need to do. Which it's going to happen. I don't think positive. That's the way we got to look at it. Got to be positive about it.
Right. So we can't vote on this next week at that workshop because that is a workshop, but we could put together another CRA meeting with this on the agenda so that we can, decide at that point. Is that okay, Christine?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. And when might you know about the grant approval for that?
I believe notifications are beginning of June, so we should know pretty quickly, yeah.
Okay. So at the next meeting, we can definitely make this a priority to make a decision on that issue. Is the rest of the board okay with that? Okay. So we're going to table that one. And then do we need to decide on the advisory board number at this time or just wait and see how the workshop goes?
I think it's just something we need to keep in the front, as we're thinking about this and, getting closer to next Thursday. Of course, just making sure that everybody is aware and, to maximize the amount of participation that takes place next Thursday. So at this time, if there's not, if we have 10 people that want to serve, that would be wonderful. Maybe there'll be 15. And that number is somewhat flexible, but there are limits. I'll have to look and see what that is.
Okay. You have that many people on the advisory?
You have a lot,
I'm thinking that's a mighty big advisory move. We're going to never come to a consensus.
I'm thinking 5 to 7 at the moment.
Oh, my goodness, Lord.
Yes, sir, Mr. Barnes.
Last time for tonight, I promise. And Bob Barnes.
Bob, I'm sorry.
Last time for tonight, Bob Barnes.
Oh.
The title is CRA Plan Revision and Boundary Extension. And I think I'm just going to add some information to this because time is of the essence for you folks. I had 2 lengthy discussions this week with your chair and your executive director, and they were very good discussions, informative. But I also had a discussion with Edgar today, the county development guy. And and this goes to your plan revision and your future. He is of the opinion, as I was of the opinion from that meeting we had about a year and a half ago, that your CRA expires December of this year. It does not go beyond unless the county approves it.
Right.
So the county needs to approve you going forward. And that should be part of your real hard work to make sure you get the ducks in a row to continue your CRA. Get that in place, and if this is part of that presentation, that's a good thing. But he reminded me that that's coming up in December.
That is why she is pushing to get this done, because they want it to be part of that, because we know we have that deadline, and to put it as the whole comprehensive plan to take and be having the discussion in like August or September, knowing that we have that December deadline.
Okay, and that other subject we talked about, I'll talk to you about it outside the meeting.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So at this point, Chair report, I think we covered most of what was up for, about the workshop next week, about trying to go forward with the Douglas CRA extension, the grants that we were discussing, which for the 2 members that came in late, we decided to have an open grant cycle And at this time, to continue the commercial grants at the limits that they are already set, we tabled the residential grants until the next CRA meeting, when Courtney could be with us and Christina could get better direction from Mr. Booth, so that we make a good decision about that. So that one will come up at the next meeting, okay? And so that's all I have. CRA Director report.
As far as yesterday, Linda and I, Commissioner Jones and I went to the Affordable Housing Forum. It was a wonderful presentation of the need for affordable housing throughout the county. They looked at rural areas as well, and just a number of great networking opportunities and resources that are available to that end. Also, as far as First Friday, we're of course going to be having our First Friday next Friday, June 1st, and it's going to be celebrating Dad. So we encourage everyone to come out and support the local businesses from 5 to 8. Also looking at, I met with the downtown group yesterday. We're beginning to talk about marketing and how to promote. Also, I see a great value also in us looking at that for economic development purposes. Every now and then, actually I got something from the Visit Gainesville group, and when they get new leads, if we have something put together, we can send out right away and say, this is who we are, this is what we have to offer. It's going to increase our opportunities. So it will not only help them, but it would help us as well. And then otherwise, as far as grants, we're waiting to hear the outcome of the DEO grants for the finding of necessity and the comprehensive plan. And of course, next Thursday we have our workshop for the Douglas neighborhood.
And that is at 6:30? Is that at 6:30 next Thursday? Okay. Another thing I forgot to mention, and it kind of ties into this, we're having a meeting next Wednesday with the new county tourism director at the Old School Center with Christina, Mr. Booth, myself. We're going to have Camp Colaqua there, the Springs Institute, some other entities to show them how much we do bring into the county and how vital we are to county tourism. And so that might be a venue to help market those businesses, because they have really great website resources that we may be able to access. Okay. Does anyone else have anything else?
What time is the meeting next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday, May 30th, 11 o'clock at the Old School Center.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Does anybody in the public have any CRA business? Come on up.
Susie Clark, High Springs. I was out in Trenton the other day and had a chance to talk with Stephanie Metz. She and her husband are the ones, of course, that started the Florida Quilt Trail. And Paul has been updating the website for it constantly. And if you get a chance, take a look at it. It's really great. The only thing I have the problem with is White Springs has got 24 quilt blocks up around town. 24. We have one with 2 in the old school waiting to go up. We had spoke to Ed over at at Alice's restaurant over a year ago, and he had looked. What he had chosen was a friendship. Yeah, you remember the friendship flag, which had brown stars, which nobody liked, so it was rejected. But I have talked to him about the possibility of doing the flag, what it looked like when Florida became a state. So it has 27 stars. Now, each of these are going to have, some small explanation where they're actually located. But one of the things that I want to work with Christine on is doing an insert, just a, two-sided insert that would go into the already printed Florida Quilt Trail information. And on one side, it would be an explanation of what the different quilt blocks were. The backside would be a walking tour of High Springs, of where these quilt blocks are. And I do know that the olive oil company is interested in the Tree of Life also. But, let's not forget, quilters numbers are crazy. And they literally take buses. If you could see some of these traveling buses that they've got going this summer all over the state of Florida, you realize that it does help bring extra people into town. But thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to speak to the CRA board? Any of the board have any comments? Okay. Well, then I call this meeting adjourned, okay?
Thank you, Christina. Job well done.
Okay?
Just die.
Okay. Okay. I'll put these back. I didn't want you to